and we'll give it another, we'll give it another few minutes for, more folks to join.
Hey, hi there. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Give it another 2 minutes, folks to join, and then we'll get started. And as folks are joining, if you don't mind, add your attendance to the meeting list. Ugh. All right, looks like we could probably get started here, and folks who join, other folks will be joining as time allows. So just so folks know, meeting is being recorded. And yeah, so before we get started with the agenda, is there anybody sort of new to the GUAC community meeting who wants to introduce themselves?
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, I beat Phil, sorry. I am Marco Rizzi I'm from Italy. I live in the northeast of Italy. I work for Red Hat and I am working with Dejan, basically. I am Dejan teammate. I have been looking at GUAC and especially at the pull request that is adding the relational database management and system support. With Ivan, I committed a pair of endpoints. And yeah, that's the first meeting I can attend. And so, yeah, nice to meet you all in the end. I can see faces of a lot of usernames I saw in GitHub. So yeah, I'm really happy to see you all.
Thanks, glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks.
Next up, Phil.
Hi, everybody. My name is Phil Katanak. I'm an engineering manager. I work with Marco within Red Hat and Dejan, obviously. We are involved in a project internally called the Trusted Content Project, which is very much centered around GUAC. Kind of transitioning into that project, we've got other Red Hat responsibilities as well, but increasingly our focus will be trusted content and all things GUAC. Nice to meet you all. Lindsay?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Lindsay Newton. I'm from VMware. I am part of the security automation team here. So I'm looking at ways that we could leverage GUAC internally and also ways that we can contribute. I've been taking a look mostly at how the collectors and the parsers are set up. So I'm kind of getting my feet wet in the code and seeing what I can contribute. It's nice to meet everybody.
Oh, whoops. Amin?
Yeah, so my name is Amin Kinabe. I am from VMware as well. Lindsay, I want to reach you after this call. I'm working as a Windows and security tech lead for the standalone Tanzu Kubernetes grid, and finding a way to bring supply chain to our tech stack and GUAC is on our to-do list.
Cool. Glad to have you. Is there anybody else? Okay. Yeah, if there's nobody else who wants to nobody else new, or we can get to the agenda. So one quick update from our end regarding OpenSSF. So for folks who some folks know, some folks don't know, but we've are in the process of contributing GUAC to OpenSSF to make it officially an OpenSSF project. It would most likely fall under the Supply Chain Integrity Working Group. We got largely TAC approval on that. We got TAC approval on that. We just need to finish going through Linux Foundation legal review, which we're hoping, since I think they meet on Fridays, they've spent the last couple of Fridays looking at GUAC. We're hoping, I think this Friday, they should be finishing that up, and very soon afterwards, we expect to become officially part of OpenSSF. And yeah, we'll keep the community updated once it's official, and once we get or if there's any blockers or anything like that, once we have more info. Cool. So that's updates on that end. So next up, there is an ENT backend presentation. Was this the one that was recorded already?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, do you want to share it or should I share it?
We'll share it if you don't have it up.
Yeah. So just for FYI, some of our folks who live over in Australia, some of the contributors who live over in Australia have done some work on ENT, and so that's why they can't contribute. That's why they can't present right now, because it's super late, early, depending on how you look at it for them. So they recorded something, and we'll be showing it off here.
All right.
Let me see whether this is the sound coming through.
It is not.
Let's wait, hold on. Let me mute this so I can. 1 second.
Still not hearing.
Yeah, still not working.
Still,
Sound.
yeah, still not hearing. Yeah, still no sound. Parts, do you want to try?
Yeah, I can try. Not sure if it's going to work, but
I mean, worst comes to worst, we can maybe send the link. I don't know if there's a link for the folks so that we can.
Day, this morning, this afternoon, depending on what time of.
okay.
It's good.
Hey everyone,
Yep.
Simon here from Insignia, and today, this morning, this afternoon, depending on what time of the part of the world you're joining us from, I'm going to give you a quick demo of what I've spent the last 6 or 7 weeks or so working on, which is implementing a Postgres and MySQL backend for GUAC, powered by a Go project called ENT, which, if you're not familiar with it, basically ENT is a kind of an ORM, I suppose, completely code generated. So it gives you all of the classic stuff you would expect, like CRUD actions and whatnot. But it also allows you to define all of your relationships in terms of edges on a graph, which gives you really neat kind of graph traversal queries without need to dig into writing really complicated joins straight out of the box with a really neat neat API for working with. So I won't dig into how this all works so much as to say I highly recommend checking out if you haven't seen it. I've been using it for a number of years. I've contributed a number of additions and features to this project, including the upsert support. And so when it came to contributing something to GUAC, which is a project that we're very interested in using, the first thing was, wow, don't really want to manage Neo4j. It's another piece of tech that we don't really want to be running. So let's contribute Postgres support, and here we are. So this is a very large PR. Apologies for that. A lot of it's code generated though, so I'd say like 90+% is code generated. So you can kind of ignore that when reviewing it, because you'll see how repetitive it is. However, I didn't quite finish this all off. There are still a number of things that are pretty critical. Vex support, scorecards, but most notably neighbors, nodes, and path support, which is needed for the GUAC visualizer. So all the core APIs that exist there. So if I go over to my terminal and kick things off again, we'll do a rebuild. And with the magic of video editing, that took 1 second. So now we can see it started up. We're running Postgres in the background. This is on the feature branch, by the way. So it's all pre-configured, all ready to kind of just work. But I'll talk in a second about how to configure things. And in the background, we're starting the API server, which is obviously where the API code for Ent is actually running. And momentarily, it will start chomping away at the queue of everything that it has in the background. So I'll just skip out of that for the moment and show you that we can actually make queries. So I've got the graphical playground here, so I can hit load on that, but we can also explore what's going on here. I've implemented the Find Software API, so I could search for API server. Obviously, I already searched for that one, but you get the idea. It's relatively quick. Kind of does all the things you would expect it to do. So how do you use it? Well, like I said, if you're on the Postgres backend branch or the branch backing the pull request, you can very easily just set the backend to Ent if it's not already there. Deploying this, all you really need to do is give it a database URL. Currently, I've only compiled in support for Postgres, obviously enabling the other supported database engines, which I'll just briefly point out, is as migration supported dialects. Here we are. So MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, Cockroach, SQLite, etc. Technically supports Gremlin, but experimental and probably won't work for you. So pick your flavor of database, compile in the driver you need, and give it a database URL. It will automatically set up the entire schema for you, which is really neat, a really neat feature of Ent. So you don't need to worry about that too much. You can disable this and use all of the regular migration features of Atlas, which is the migration engine that Ent uses, which is basically Terraform for SQL. Also a really cool project if you haven't come across it. But just for now, auto migrate does its magic and it works. So let's spend the next minute just talking very quickly about what the code looks like. So in the assembler, you'll notice we've got a bunch of backends, all the ones you're probably familiar with, and we've got Ent. I did kind of generate this in reverse, and before loading the PR, I want to change the directory structure to be the other way around, but in here, you've actually got the backend, which is the actual backend. So you'll see all of the usual stuff you're familiar with, artifacts, OSV, etc. All the tests here pass. They're all based on the tests from the InMem implementation. So they will look familiar to anyone who has written tests for this project before. With the one slight difference is that I had to write a test harness, which basically runs every example within its own transaction. So we get a nice pristine state between each example. So that's the actual implementation. To kind of give you an idea of what the API looks like, it's got something fairly familiar. Doing the graph traversal for packages is probably the most complicated thing we do. but it makes that really trivial. So that's how it looks. Upserting package trees, obviously they're all different tables backing them. So a bit difficult to do a single upsert. So that runs in a transaction, but it does work really well. I've got a few ideas how we can modify this to be able to do bulk upserts that actually do bulk upserts on the database instead of just iterating over everything locally. But that's something we can tackle in a future update. So that's that, and the schema, the EMP schema. This is kind of the core of everything which EMP generates from. So inside of this, we have basically the definitions for everything that we run with. So take a look at package version, and you'll see all the fields. And so EMP will behind the scenes generate all of the files that support this, which you can peruse in your own time. Fair bit to it. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. Ping me on Slack. I think my handle is Ivan. I might be the only Ivan Vanderbilt in there. Hope so. Hopefully my primary key is still primary. And otherwise, yeah, look forward to hearing your feedback. And also would love some contributions to just close out the final pieces here, whether it's contributing tests or the actual API implementation. Just open a PR against mine, and away we go. Sorry I couldn't be there today to meet everyone. I'll join a future call in the future. Yeah, time zones in New Zealand, not the best with the East Coast, but hopefully we can fix up soon. Next month, however, I will be at B-Sides and DEF CON in Vegas. So if you're there, come and find me and say hi. Thank you.
Well, I know it's he's not here, but thank you for the presentation. I don't know if I know there's has there been anybody else who's been like poking around with ENT who might be able to answer some questions? Because I know, for example, myself, like I'm curious if anybody who's ever poked around with it who has like performance, any things with performance or any yeah. If not, we can move on to the next agenda topic, and definitely, yeah, if anybody has any questions, put them in GUAC Slack, and I guess they'll be answered asynchronously. So next up on the agenda is the Friends of GUAC poll from Brendan.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So I think one of the things that we were chatting about a little bit in the issues, I think DJ and you opened a issue around like actually collect the I know we had the Rust implementation as well. So I think there is a desire to at least kind of figure out how we can point folks to those projects, and in a way that like doesn't add too much overhead as well. I think some of the things you're thinking about mainly is that I think there are kind of stages in which like projects whether they're using GUAC, whether they're writing things for GUAC, whether it's something that they're looking for it to be closely maintained. So I think there's kind of like a little bit of a spectrum, and so I think we are looking towards like, oh, can we have a process in which you start off at first, just open an issue, say like, oh, I have a project that uses GUAC, I have a project that everything I collected for GUAC. Can I just add myself to a friends of GUAC.md file in the repo, so that at least like folks get to like explore the different projects that people are working on, and then also add to the documentations to be like, oh, if you want to run an SG collector, here's how you can do it. And then I think we also further down the lines, I know we talked a little bit about this, is like, oh, what would it mean to have, like, for example, the GUAC Rust library, right? I think it may make sense to be under the GUAC organization, so that people can more readily discover it. and so like we can probably help maintain some of these things that are being used, right? So the feedback that that we wanted to get is, so the proposal is we'll have a friends of GUAC markdown on the main repo. So this is something that anyone can run. Well, you just open a PR, and as long as it's like not spam as tangentially like using GUAC, then we can add it into that file. And then the thing we're thinking about is that if you want to have a repo that is part of the GUAC org, we will have different labels. So I think projects can come in as like community projects where they are maintained by the community directly, and then at some point, if this is core functionality that we can also help support, then we want to add a label that this is a supported project. So this means that, even if, handling bus factors and other things, where like a community member that's, working for a company, they no longer are working in the direction of GUAC, at least this will be a project that the maintainers will help pick up and make sure it stays supported. So I think that's a general proposal, and then we'll have more details about this going out. I think the feedback we wanted to get was like, what do people think about this? Any suggestions to this proposal, or any other ideas that you think may work well? Michael.
Yeah, so I'm gonna I think leave off the actual community feedback to the rest of the community, but I think one question I know that is kind of an open question, and I know we would love to get some feedback on or get some input on, is given that a lot of GUAC right now is that GraphQL API, a lot of things that folks might be building are going to be very much sort of reliant on that API. And so we're curious all around, suggestions on making that sort of thing super easy. Because I noticed you have in the notes there, Brendan, around like a mono repo and that sort of thing, right? Because this actual question has come up a couple of times because we ran into a couple of bugs where, the GUAC visualizer is still experimental, but what can often happen, right, is our code generation for the GUAC visualizer to implement, is sometimes out of sync with the actual GraphQL that's being generated for the internal GUAC, Golang stuff. And I'm curious actually to hear from some of the folks who've been writing in the Rust side. Are you running into any issues? Like if we make an update to the GraphQL, are you able to stay in sync and that sort of thing?
I haven't had any problems so far, but yeah, that's because it's not that there's not that much activity there. I mean, we're just developing things that we need at the moment, and keeping in sync manually. But I think like if more people start using those kind of things, then yeah, it might get tricky. But I'm not sure what's the solution for that.
Yeah, one thing I've seen in the past, right? Like obviously if you're using a mono repo, it's a little bit easier because everything can just point to the same GraphQL, and just when one thing updates, everything else can update. In our case, obviously, especially in the open source world, that can be a little difficult to do because a lot of folks are like, no, I just want to download purely the Rust library. I only want to download the Go piece or whatever. One of the things I've seen done is at least having some sort of automation, like some sort of way to say, oh, yes, this updated, which then triggers everything down the line. I'm not 100% sure how that might work when we start to implement it, but I think in actually I have a couple ideas, but I wonder if there's like something that's relatively bog standard that folks have done.
So what we've done in other project is to use Git sub modules, for example, to include Helm charts that are hosted in another repo. That works reasonably well. So that also might be a solution. So to just include the GraphQL definitions in a for example Rust library instead of manually updating things. I can try that and see how it works.
So I guess like similar to Kubernetes, where they have like all the API machinery within a repo, and then you can kind of just have that as a, we can sub-module that. Cool. Any thoughts on the kind of like mentioning projects, or having projects hosted under the repo and things like that? Okay. Otherwise, it sounds like, I'm assuming silence means people have no issues with it. So we'll go ahead. I'll open up here to add the MD file IDs, add a bit of process, but it should be pretty straightforward. Just like open a PR against the markdown and just add the self there.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
All right, cool. Yeah, if there's nothing else on that end, we can go on to the next agenda item from Parth around Orango DB and Neptune updates.
Right, awesome. Yeah, real quick, just to give some, a shout out for Neptune, Steve Menzies, I believe his last name, and the Yahoo team have been doing a lot of work on the Neptune side. So just wanted to call that out. They aren't here today. They have nothing to demo yet, but we discovered that a lot of the Cypher code that we've written is actually compatible with Neptune. So it should make the integration with Neptune a lot easier. Neptune uses OpenCypher, and it's very close, very similar to the Cypher, obviously Cypher that Neo4j uses. There's some differences, but I think we should be able to port over a lot of that code, a lot of that Neo4j work that we did initially, and use it for Neptune. So I think we should see that database coming online pretty soon also. So good work on that side. All right, so next I'll show off the Orango work that we've been doing. So similar to how Ivan was showing off Ent, we have a Docker Compose. In the actual GUAC repo itself, there is Docker Compose that will bring up Orango, as well as the GraphQL server together. So it makes it pretty easy to run. At the same time, this will automatically configure the database like it needs to, similar to how Postgres was automatically configured with the schemas and so forth. This will configure everything for you, so you should be ready to ingest right from the beginning. So there's no needed work or no knowledge needs to be. There's no pre-knowledge that needs to be done with Orango or pre-configuration. You just bring it up and you're kind of good to go. Orango actually has an Apache, Apache license, Apache 2 license, so it's very friendly for open source use. So that's why we kind of lean toward it. At the same time, based on some of our testing, it's been very performant. And I'll show that off here. At the same, we've done a lot of work on the back end on the GUAC ingestion side, just to make it a lot more quicker. So I think a lot of the other backends will see some of this benefit. So for example, initially when we were working, we were actually, we didn't have a separation between what we call nouns and verbs in terms of ingestion. So there was a lot of repeated process in terms of ingesting the same, for example, artifact or package multiple times when it didn't need to be, right? So we did some work in terms of separating that out, so you can do some kind of some deduplication. There's still some in terms of deduplication that needs to work, that needs to be done, so that if it does exist in the database, we don't ingest it again. So we're trying to figure that piece out. But we did, in terms of separating the verbs and nouns, we can do deduplication in terms of documents now. So if a document contains a package is referenced multiple times, or an artifact is referenced multiple times, it's no longer going to keep trying to ingest it again and again if it's already there, right? Ingest it once and kind of look for it. So that's one piece that we did. And then after that, the other thing we did is we started adding bulk ingestion. So here you can see in the actual GraphQL schema, and let me know if this is too small. I can make it a little bit bigger.
One or two bigger would be good.
One or two? Okay. So you can see down here, just want to show it off quickly in the actual, this is, for example, ingesting packages. Right now we have a bulk ingest packages that we can, that all the different backends will be implementing. So for example, the in-memory one already has this, the current existing one, as well as the Orango one supports this. So now we can bulk ingest. And I think similarly, I think Ivan was mentioning that this is something that he was looking at to make it more performant. So each of the databases will kind of implement bulk ingestion, so it makes it a lot quicker. So you're not waiting on a lot of round trips with GraphQL and the database and so forth. Another example is that was a noun, right? A package, and a verb. Similarly, you could do the same thing with scorecards and salsa attestations and whatever else, right? You can ingest all of them in bulk. So going back to this, right? So I have Orango up and running. What I'm going to do now is kind of show off, okay, just do some, so if you remember, we have that GUAC data. Let me make sure this is moving. We have that GUAC data that we kind of usually test with, and we have a bunch of examples kind of going off of that. So one of the goals that I had for this meeting is being able to ingest everything from GUAC data. So there are, there's salsa attestations in there, there's scorecards, there are XPDX, CycloneDX, SBOMs, and all those kind of things. So what I wanted to do is be able to ingest and kind of show off, like, okay, with all the different changes that we made to GUAC, as well as some of the performance things that performance improvements we made on Orango itself in terms of how it's ingesting and querying for things. We have a pretty good, I think, a baseline. What that we can use for others to. That we can use for others to, like, other databases to kind of compare against. So running this, so what I'll do is, oh, that's right. So let me actually make it clear this, go up, make it a little bigger, export. So one thing we added here, and another thing we added on the GUAC side, is the ability to ingest multiple documents at the same time, right? So for example, this could be XPDX, SBOMs, CycloneDX, whatever it is, right? At the same time, to basically ingest quicker, right, into the database. If the database can handle it, having parallel document ingestion, and this environment variable basically allows you to set it. So for now, as we were testing and so forth, we wanted to see, the different databases might behave differently. So we didn't want to have a set number. So what this allows you to do is, like, set the number, right? So by default, it's set to 1, but you can increase it, and you can see if the database can handle multiple writes to it at the same time, kind of thing, and how performant it is. So in this case, like with my computer and the Orango, I am able to ingest like 3 documents at a time. Preferably, like 2 documents also works, but I think we can increase that, as the time goes on and so forth. But what this kind of allows you to do is that, because they're ingesting in parallel, right, it reduces the time of ingestion greatly for multiple documents. So what I'll do here is I'm going to run the GUAC1 collect files command here, and on the GUAC data that we have. So we can kind of see what happens. And I'll put a time in front of it just to kind of show off, like, okay, how much time it took. So once that kicks off, you can see it's going through. It's relatively quick.
Yeah, just to add over here, and the reason I think we have like a set number of files that you parallelly ingest. I think it's mainly around, like, if we have too much in parallel, and given like this particular data set that we have, for example, all the SPX documents are all the same Kubernetes versions. There's a lot of overlap. So what ends up happening is if you do more, if we try and like do more parallelism without informing the database on like what type of parallelism we're doing, then it ends up not dealing with the so-called optimistic locking very well. But in the event with real data, we imagine that there'll be like a more independent spread of the nodes being touched. So there shouldn't be that much issue.
Right. Yeah. So like you're saying, like the GUAC data is basically test data. So there's probably like the worst case scenario we can throw at it, because a lot of the data is very, very similar, right? You can see here, just based on this, you can see there's different versions of the kube scheduler getting ingested. So there's little variation between these things, right? So that's why you might run into the lock issues. But in a better case scenario, you're not going to be ingesting probably the same type of SBOM, very similar SBOMs. It can handle it, right? It's not an issue, but it's like it'd probably be much more performant in that case. So you can see down here, it took 21 seconds. This is with the Docker Compose and so forth running. So 21 seconds to ingest all of the GUAC data. So which is very good. Before we were seeing before our different optimizations that we did, just to ingest some of the XPDX documents, it was taking like 7 minutes. So we did a lot of work between the community meetings just to get this to get the performance to where it is. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, and I also just want to highlight, we're seeing also much better just results on an actual server as well. So like this sort of thing is running locally, right, on your laptop, which is like going to be very different than somebody actually, because some folks might say, hey, the 67 documents, I have hundreds of thousands of SBOMs we want to ingest. We're seeing much better, performance on an actual server. And then also, obviously, as time goes on, folks will have to think about their own clustering and, all that stuff when it comes to some of these databases and what makes sense for them as well, right? Because there's going to be varying trade-offs on folks who have more of like a ingestion-focused use case where like, no, I want to ingest lots and lots of documents that I want to run a handful of queries on, versus folks who are going to be like, no, I'm running tons and tons and tons of queries, but I'm only doing ingestion once a week or something like that.
All right, awesome. Just really quick, I don't want to take too much time. I know there's other presentations. So here's the Arango side. Arango itself has a UI. You can see all these different collections that have been set up. Again, like all this stuff is set up by GUAC, right? When you initialize, it'll set up all the collections that it needs. It'll figure out all the different indexes and so forth. So you can see in here, it'll have a bunch of indexes, that we've determined are needed in order to perform the queries quicker and so forth. So for example, in here, you can see there's a GUAC key, and then as well as by name, right? If you're searching a package by name, you want to be able to quickly index that, search for that so that that's been indexed already. You can also run your own queries if you want to. So Arango also uses a query language specific to itself. It's called Arango Query Language, AQL, right? Very, what do you call it? Yeah, they're not very smart about the name, right? It's pretty simple. So you can see, like, for example, what this is doing. It's pretty simple to read. Let me make it a little bit bigger. I'll make it a little small. But you can see here what this is trying to do is going through all the different artifacts to see if there is a salsa attestation associated with it, and the salsa attestation that's there, if there is like a build associated with it, and then returning all the different values below it, right? And then we can filter on specific things, right? If the artifact has a specific digest and so forth, right? It'll filter on that, so you can put filters in here. So let me zoom out a little bit. So if I execute this, you can see 1,000 elements got returned. So Arango, we've noticed, is very quick in terms of ingestion as well as querying. So you can see a bunch of salsa attestations got returned down here. At the same time, right, this is all behind the scenes, right? We want people to be using the GraphQL, right? The GraphQL API will also serve all this information to you. So similarly, right, if I search for all the salsa attestations, there are like the query before said there's like 1,000 in here already. So you can see returned a bunch of returned all these salsa attestations in the proper format, so you can what the artifact was, what it's built from, what the subject was, what the build type was, where was it built from. In this case, it was a cloud build, and all the different salsa predicate information. And later on, we want to be supporting ITE6, right? Other types of attestations. So there's just one type. Right, scorecard similarly, right? We can query for scorecard information, so you can see all the different information come out that. This is for the Kubernetes repo on a specific commit. You can see the what the score was, and the different aggregate score, as well as the different checks that it ran. Right, sources similarly, all the different things you kind of you're kind of used to with GraphQL. All that stuff works. So the next goal is basically, right, just keep finish up the rest of the implementations. So I still have to. There's still a couple of verbs that are left to do, like vulnerability, certify vulnerability has not been done yet, for example. So stuff like that. Finish up all the different verbs. Oh yes, this was a feature that got added by Brandon Lum here. So this is basically the ability to search by text, right? So this is that instead of putting in a Perl, or instead of putting in a specific format, can you just do like a text search for something, right? So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just doing a text search. Give me everything, all the packages, all the artifacts, and all the sources that contain the word Kubernetes, right? And you can see all the things coming back here. So there's a name here. This one contains Kubernetes. This is Kubernetes, and then it keeps going down. There'll be artifacts and packages and whatever else, and sources that might contain the word Kubernetes. So this is another addition that we've added for the that's on the GraphQL side, as well as has to be implemented on the Orango, as well as the other databases. Brendan?
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that was one of the use cases that we were seeing from folks that want to organize their S-bombs for the EO. So they just wanted to, a lot of them, they're like, I'm not really exactly sure what the exact Perl or the identifier is, but they know generally the name and the version, or they're given a hash. So this kind of acts as a fuzzy way to get it out.
Okay. Yeah, it makes it a lot simpler to search for information, and this has been a common ask by a lot of users. It's like, can we, putting in a Perl, it has to be fully qualified Perl kind of thing, right? It's annoying. I'd rather be like, hey, I just want to search for, give me everything you know about Kubernetes, and I can just, if you don't want artifacts and sources, right, we can just get rid of artifacts and sources from this list, and you can just get the packages back and so forth. So we can get the specific information you want out of this.
Can you take multiple tokens? Give me Kubernetes 1.x or something like that.
So the way so this is using the Orango search feature, and so what Orango does is actually, Pav, do you mind opening up the Orango console? I can show a little bit.
Sure.
So the Orango has some default analyzers, so you're based on the corpus of the information and the fields that we configure it to. So yeah, so over here you can see we configure a bunch of things, and then if you go down, the analyzers are the things that we want to look at. So if you scroll down a little bit, so we have the text English analyzer, the identity analyzer, which is just verbatim the text itself, and then we created a custom gram one, which basically Pav, you go to analyzers on the left hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one basically it's a n-gram from 4 to 7 with a bunch of configurations. So Orango has a bunch of additional fields that you can also add analyzers to. So if you find that something's not coming up, then you can probably add an analyzer saying that you're looking for a specific pattern, maybe something with dash or something like that.
Cool.
Any other questions? All right, awesome. Hand it back to you, Mike.
Cool. So next up, let me see if is just, oh yeah, Jesse White, you're up
folks.
next.
Yep, I can share some things. Thanks, Mike. Let's see. Let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Before I go ahead, Jesse, is want to make sure that we have enough time for this. We give it like the justice.
I can keep it quick and.
Okay, that's why I just want to make sure that you didn't have like 20 minutes for things you want to talk.
Yeah, no. Can keep it real short here.
Yeah, I mean, the work you've done so far has been great. So with the Tinker Pop and stuff. So yeah,
I'll be right
definitely.
Back. Just got to restart Chrome to be able to share my screen here.
While he's restarting, John, you had a question about office hours time.
Yeah, I just wanted to as GUAC became more popular and the time zones are changing. So, for example, office hours at the moment are now European time 8 to 9 p.m. Friday, and it's very hard, for example, for me to join, and I don't think we'll see much users coming to the time slot. So maybe just think about something. I know a different working group that I was on before. Maybe we can do like a switch between a couple every other week. Have a different hour that's a little bit more suitable to people in different time zones. But nothing to decide now. Just to raise awareness of this and maybe think about it in the future.
Yep.
Sounds good.
We'll do that.
All right, I'm back with sharing capabilities. So
Okay, cool.
Pop things up here. Okay, just a couple things I want to share. Just quickly developing with Tilt. So I see most folks are using Docker Compose here as part of their lifecycle. I like using Tilt and Kubernetes there personally. So that was merged, I think, to the main branch just this week. So thanks for everyone for reviewing and helping with that. How to use it, pretty simple. I tend to use Kind, or you can use other tools there to create your cluster. So Kind create cluster. That creates basically Kubernetes quote unquote cluster as a container in Docker, right? And then sets up the control plane and all the configuration. And then once that's up, in just a second here, we should be able to, we just look at Docker, we'll have this Kind node running. Then we can do tilt up. And then press the space bar. That'll open up a browser window and we'll see all these different services here. So what it's actually doing is it's going to go ahead and compile and build the containers and then actually push it into the case cluster and then run everything there locally. And then the neat thing is it actually watches for changes. So as you modify source files, etc., it'll rebuild the containers and then automatically redeploy it. So interesting developer lifecycle there for those that like working this way. So we can kind of let this roll here. Actually, looks like it just finished building. Let's push in the image, and then we'll see the services starting to start up there as well. So looks like. Not quite up because of some service dependencies. So we'll give this just a bit. I'll just switch gears quickly. We're going to look at, switch from Tilt to look at the Gremlin data source. So this is something I've been working on, kind of just mostly to learn Gremlin, spend a bit more time with Go, and then learn the data model in the project. That's kind of my personal motivations there for doing it. And then, I think it could be interesting alternative there as well, since Gremlin is widely supported by graph databases. So, maybe there'll still be some use cases out in the wild there as well. To get some idea, like here's the list of databases that support Gremlin, right? Neptune, Cosmos, Janus Graph, DSC Graph, OrangoDB even has like a Gremlin adapter for it as well. So we'll see what that looks like. But right now, in terms of support, we can ingest and query artifacts. So there's a basic upsert pattern in place there for that and be able to query them. And I do have scorecards working as well. So being able to ingest and query those and create paths accordingly. It's pretty basic so far, just trying to work out the basic patterns and upserts, and get that sorted. And once make some progress there, I'll start implementing more of the verbs, but looks pretty good there so far. So that's that. We'll look back at Tilt. Maybe our environment is up now. Again, you just press space again, open that browser up. And if I look at the GraphQL service, there's actually a link right at the top here. Click that, and then I can hop right in. So one of the mutations, just quick scorecard, and then be able to query here as well. So we see things, being able to ingest and come back. This was actually ingested into Janus Graph as the graph database, which is the one backing the Gremlin API here. And I can see, quickly kind of go in there. Here's what we would do to look at it. So I can say, kubectl exec and get into that container, right? And now I have a Gremlin console in there. I can connect into graph, and then I think the syntax is something like this: d.v, and the vertices that are there in the database. Use the raw Gremlin queries. So all this is like nested Docker containers there in K8s. So that's that. So thanks for merging the Tilt PR, and I'll keep kind of iterating and hacking on the Gremlin data source there as time permits. I do have a question maybe for the team here that'd be of interest for the other source as well. Do we have any form of, I guess, like, testing or, kind of black box testing? What I'm seeing is a lot of the data sources implementing unit tests there for the respective engines. But is there anything kind of outside of that, right, that really verifies that all these that we're developing operate in the same way, just from an accuracy standpoint? Is there anything like that existing, or thoughts there?
So we don't have anything right now, but it's definitely on our list. One of the things we were thinking about was getting like a set of SBOM, scorecard, all that sort of data, so that with a sort of an expected output, like, also with a set of queries, like if you run the GraphQL against these things, this should be the results.
Output, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but we haven't built it quite yet.
So
but it's definitely
we have something actually. So I mean, I'll let Jeff go, but I think that's what he's going to say. We do have the end-to-end test, which does the GraphQL and compares to specific queries or outputs. I mean.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the unit tests for the in-memory. So the in-memory backend has unit tests that are written in a way where it doesn't actually understand the implementation, except for a couple of the IDs. So the intention there was like, we were going to write the unit tests for that in-memory backend, and then kind of reuse them as an acceptance test for all the different backends. We just haven't reused it. I saw that Ivan basically cut and paste them and just reused them for the Orango as unit tests. He might have, not Orango, as for the Ent as unit tests. He might have done a little bit of tweaking here and there due to the specifics of Ent. So if you wanted to, you could take a look at those in-memory backend unit tests and see if you could just run them, or we can see if we can have a more concerted effort to get those running at the one step up as the official acceptance tests for the backends. And yes, what you said, Parth, too. There is an end-to-end test which just brings everything up, runs an ingestion, runs some queries, and expects some results. So stuff like that would work too, but that's for the whole thing, not just specific acceptance tests for the backend implementations.
Okay, so I guess some bits there already that can be leveraged, but nothing like exhaustive in terms of acceptance criteria for a backend. Okay, got it. That gives me a good idea where we are. Thank you. All right, we could dive in more, but we're short on time, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks, folks, for giving me the opportunity to present here.
I saw Mihai had his hand up. Was there anything you wanted to add?
It mostly has been said. We are also planning to do some fast testing, so send random GraphQL queries for ingest and query, and basically stress test all of the backends, but that's on the roadmap for much later.
Good, got it.
Cool. So I know we have 5 minutes left. Was there any other topics? I don't know if the large file support stuff was anything we wanted to discuss.
No, it just Brandon answered the question. Thanks, Brandon. So I stumbled into a similar problem, and I was just wondering if anybody else was thinking about it, and there's an issue, so we can continue there.
Cool.
That's all good. Cheers.
Yeah, there's a little bit of, I think we chatted a little bit about this week. It's kind of like technically, so like GUAC 1 talks directly to GraphQL and does the ingestion on its own CL locally in memory, and then the collector flow technically puts stuff in nets, but nets has that limitation. We did chat about whether it'll be worth like having the blob store just to upload stuff, but it seems like we were kind of straying a little bit away from adding any additional infrastructure requirements. One of the things that we discussed alternative would be to just change all the collectors to do what GUAC 1 does, which is like do the parsing locally and just talk directly to GraphQL. But yeah, I'm happy to chat about that offline. I'll update the issue as well with some discussions we've had.
Perfect.
Cool. So I know we don't have time right now, but one of the things I think is worthwhile just to kind of have folks think about issue 1044 regarding brainstorming discussion on like a higher level CLI. So one of the things that folks had said is like, hey, if I don't know GUAC and I just want to, if I don't know GraphQL and I just want to be able to kind of run some common queries like search everything regarding a particular string or fetch me all vulnerabilities, blah, 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 that sort of thing. I think folks are asking for a little bit of a higher level CLI there, along with other sorts of common things. And there's a lot there that could be potentially, feel free to look at that issue and add thoughts.
I think there's also an MD file that we started on the main. I'll link that in the meeting also for some use cases and so forth. Cool.
And as a reminder, at least until some of the office hour stuff is sorted out, we still have the weekly office hours if folks have like deeper questions. Also expect once we're officially part of OpenSSF, most likely we'll be having some webinars and some other GUAC related trainings and events and that sort of thing. Final thoughts, ideas? Oh, did somebody raise their hand? Or no. Anything else?
I just quick announcement. We do have office hours tomorrow, so if anyone wants to come back for that.
Cool. If there's nothing else, see you on Slack, and I'll we'll see everybody next month at the next meeting.
Take care, folks.
Later.
Thank you.